Who let the Doge out? That's the focus of tonight's angle. One thing should be really clear by now. The Washington bureaucracy will do anything in its power to avoid accountability. They want to spend your money with impunity on whatever floats their boat. Transparency for the swamp is what modesty is for the Kardashians. Now, this partly explains the Biden administration's mad scramble to Trump-proof various departments and agencies, insulating their pet projects from extinction and their staff from accountability. In Rio this week, Biden tried feebly to protect his climate agenda.
I'm leaving office in January. I will leave my successor and my country a strong foundation to build on if they choose to do so. It's true, some may seek to deny or delay the clean energy revolution that's underway in America. But nobody can reverse it. Nobody.
Nobody. Who can take him seriously in that Tommy Bahamas shirt or whatever? I just can't take him seriously. So what's the implication here? That the voters, they don't have a say. Same playbook they used during COVID, fear and control, whether you like it or not. Because government experts say so.
This is the single greatest existential threat to humanity if we do not deal with climate change. Our children, our great-grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren, their future is going to be determined by what we do in the next 4 to 6 years.
Those participants behind him seem really engaged. Well, wait, did he say that for the next 4 to 6 years? Well, given that Trump has pledged to pull back on the climate change agenda, the Department of Energy right now is racing to blow close to $25 billion in pending loans to supposedly green businesses. Now, Biden apparently wants to cement his climate legacy, according to Politico. So should these federal energy department loan guarantees even continue at all? After all, the $465 million loan to Elon Musk's electric car company, that worked out so well, and it did, that he was able to pay it off early. 2 thumbs up for that. But of course, there's also the infamous Solyndra debacle, leaving taxpayers on the hook for more than $500 million before that went belly up. So will Doge recommend that Trump do away with a loan program that gave Tesla such a huge boost? It's unclear. But Trump repeatedly said that he wanted to cut the money off in his first term. In our bloated government, there's waste and there's inefficiency. We know it. And more than that, there's fraud everywhere. Hundreds of billions of dollars we know were stolen during COVID. That was the PPE fraud, all those people applying who didn't deserve the money. But there's also welfare fraud as well.
Do you guys have a sense of how much is being stolen?
Billions.
Billions of dollars.
Billions with a B. Every year. The quality control issues that we have are minuscule compared to the fraud.
That is terrifying. So when taxpayers find out how much of their money is wasted on superfluous, inefficient, pointless, whacked-out junk, and then on top of that, the hundreds of billions in fraud, trillions over the years, undoubtedly, I think there's going to be a groundswell of support for the work that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have pledged to do at Doge. Now, by the way, to ensure that they control their own messaging, the duo is even launching their own podcast. This is brilliant.
Elon and I are going to start a separate track of Dogecasts that explain exactly what we're doing to the public to provide transparency in what is a once-in-a-generation project. We want to bring the public along with us, to lift the curtain, to take us behind the scenes of what actually that waste, fraud, and abuse in government looks like. However bad you think it is, it's probably worse. But we don't want to do this to just expose the problem. We want to do it to solve the problem.
Now, this is sending shivers up and down the spines of not just senior officials in the outgoing administration, but the hundreds of thousands of federal employees who never came back to work after the pandemic. That's a good gig. Nearly 2/3 of the more than 2.2 million federal workers are still approved to work from home. This is a total joke. Of course, it's also killing D.C. small businesses. It's so bad that liberal Mayor Muriel Bowser is pleading for Trump to somehow get the workers back into the city. Last year, the Government Accountability Office concluded that 17 of the 24 largest federal agencies used on average only 25% of their office space. I don't know, what can you turn them into? Yoga studios, dance studios, apartments? How about this idea? For those who don't show up to work, well, you're obviously not that essential. This from Elon and Vivek's Wall Street Journal column. The number of federal employees to cut should be at least proportionate to the number of federal regulations that are nullified. Fewer employees required to enforce fewer regulations. But the agency would produce fewer regulations once its scope of authority is properly limited. Hear, hear. It is long since time to return power to the people. DOGE will rely both on the Constitution and Supreme Court precedent as the authority to enact these sweeping reforms. And again, this prospect is absolutely terrifying Democrats, bureaucrats, freeloaders, and all the companies that should never have gotten government contracts in the first place. The reflexive response of the swamp under scrutiny never changes, though. Lies and personal attacks.
There's no mandate here, but what there certainly should not be is a blank check to appoint a chaos cabinet like he's done. It's like the Star Wars cantina of cabinets, and it's going to really jeopardize America's safety.
Safety? Wait. Wasserman Schultz, safety? We have a president right now who can't find his way into a photo shoot authorizing Ukraine to shoot U.S.-made missiles deep into Russia. And she's talking about safety? Right now, Europe is on high alert because of what Biden, or Biden's puppet master, is doing to ramp up the aggression, almost begging Putin to respond. And all this is happening as our vice president is resting up after her loss in Hawaii. You cannot make this up. So none of this is acceptable. Their terrible record at home and abroad is the main reason that Harris lost. And they're not changing a darn thing, at least not yet. Who thinks Harris is even aware that the Pentagon authorized another $275 million for Ukraine today? Well, just another effort to Trump-proof our foreign policy and military expenditures. But everyone tonight, remember this, as the Trump-proofing continues. Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress were elected because the American people do not trust our unelected bureaucrats to do the right thing. Too much money has been wasted over too many years. Too many mistakes have been made with zero repercussions. And now the bureaucrats in Washington are going to learn that Trump and the voters aren't kidding. We mean business. And this time, we're going to have our way. And that's The Angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.